What is the strangest thing you've witnessed someone do in public? Once saw a man standing next to an extremely expensive looking home jump headfirst into a hedge, pull himself out, look at the hedge, and jump back in headfirst. He continued to do this for a while until someone nearby asked him if he were okay, to which he responded with, "Don't worry, this is my hedge, I'm just bored." Still to this day I respect his casual not giving a duck vibe. He should have let someone else have a try instead of keeping it all for himself. Just the hedge fund manager hogging it all for himself. Standing in line in a store at the mall when I hear a weird sound from a woman's large tote bag that is also slightly moving. Could swear I heard a quack. Couldn't be though, except it was. She saw me looking at her bag confused, so opened it and showed me that she had half a dozen ducklings in there. She said she had errands to run and couldn't leave them in the car because of the heat. Made sense, but I think carrying around half a dozen baby ducks in a bag is pretty strange. That's a responsible owner, though. Agreed. I was stopped at a red light and there was a lady in the car next to me. She was having really sporadic head movements. Not the head bob dancing type, but just kinda crazy. After like 10 to 15 seconds of this, her neck went limp and her head just hung forward. The light turned green, and I hesitated a moment wondering if she needed medical care, and was about to pull in front of her to check on her when her head abruptly jerked back up, and she drove off without hesitation. Sounds like she was nodding out on opiates. That's even more terrifying. While driving indeed. I saw a woman on the GO train pull out an entire white onion from her purse, then proceed to eat it like an apple, as if it were nothing. She was tearing up and didn't seem to be enjoying it much. That's how painful a GO train ride is. You wouldn't mind eating a raw onion. Must have improved her ride. Once saw a man unicycling through a mall parking lot with groceries bags in each hand during a snowstorm. No one ever believes me. They don't believe me when I first tell them and assume I said bicycle. They really don't believe me when I correct them and say no, unicycle, one wheel. I wouldn't have bothered telling you this if there had been two wheels. I unicycle to the grocery store all the time and have done it during some light snow. I use a backpack rather than carrying things in my hands though. I suppose you do this because there is a "no bicycles" sign on that road. Right in front of my house, a couple of guys stopped their car, left it in the middle of the street, and began a fist fight. Then after a couple of minutes of each of them throwing more or less ineffectual punches, they both stopped and got back in the car and drove away. It's that last part that makes it so strange. If an argument had proceeded to blows, then I wouldn't just get back in the car with the other guy, as if nothing ever happened. Isn't the whole point of a fist fight between friends to resolve the issue? Like you get mad, so you punch each other until you're not mad, and soon after you laugh about it and apologize. Not a healthy dynamic, but that's happened for me. It's happened to me and my best friend before. He started it and was super apologetic about it. Then we started arguing about who would have won if he hadn't stopped and if I had been standing instead of sitting. I watched a woman walk into Chipotle, wash her hands for a solid 5 minutes under the Sprite in the soda fountain, and then fill up a trash bag fully with the Sprite and walk out with it. If I was working there, I'd have just stood there and watched, because there's no way I'm interfering with whatever's going on. I was actually watching to see what the staff did, and you got it, nobody interfered. Suburban mom gets free soda for life using this one weird trick you won't believe. I was in a bathroom stall the other day when a little boy, maybe 6 to 7 years old, goes in the stall beside me. He sits on the toilet and starts humming some made up tune. That was already a little funny but nothing uncommon. Then he starts aggressively humming louder and louder. It gets to the point where it's almost just shrieking, and then he suddenly stops because he's out of breath. 2 seconds later I hear a plop in the toilet and he then begins singing hallelujah, hallelujah. I just pooped in the toilet, and repeats it a few times. I was almost passing out from trying to hide my laughter. That is awesome. You heard a legendary song that summons forth the poop? An old dude put down his suitcase and started doing a weird interpretive dance. The worst part is that this was in a crowd of hundreds of people, and he was staring me down specifically with a creepy smile. I was a couple hundred feet away, and when I looked back there he was, smiling, dancing. eyes locked onto me. I can just imagine him with his fingers fanned out behind his back, hop stepping and jumping near and far like some exotic Elmer bird. Near, far, want some fuck? I moved to a town which had a bit of a bad reputation. The first thing I saw when I was bringing boxes in was a man walking down the street with a bunch of plastic bags on fire. He was holding it like a lantern and was so casual about it despite flaming plastic dripping onto him. Actually like the town though. It's got character. Did your move to Night Vale? If you see something, say nothing and drink to forget. I was on the bus heading to grad school one afternoon when this lady gets on the bus, her shirt covered in an uncommon reddish brown substance that was on her shirt and caked around her mouth and face. She finds a seat towards the back of the bus across from where I was sitting and pulls from a paper bag a half-eaten rotisserie chicken covered in what I thought looked like raspberry jelly. She then reaches into her pants and starts smearing what I can only assume to be her menstrual blood over the chicken as she then proceeds to take bite from the chicken and lick her fingers clean. I need you to go ahead and delete this. THX. Can you burn comments? Because that one needs killing with fire. Twice. Years ago I used to work doors as a bouncer. Had one bloke walk up the road towards me well into his cups. One step sideways for every step forward. Now what I mean. Spot the pub, spot me, and do the old straight on march that every bloke does when they are trying to hide their intox level. Marches up to a hand's breadth away from me, stares over my shoulder at the door. Evening, sir. I say. No response. Not tonight, sir. I say. He finally looks at me, slurs something like why not. I state the obvious. Who he ain't happy with that. Goes on a full minute tirade on how the world was against him. That every bouncer he's met tonight has been and that I was knocking him back cause he was Corey, Aboriginal, for Eusebius Reardon. As he's ranting, he's shrugging out of his clothes, and by the time he's done, he's stark bloody naked on one of the busiest streets in the city. He then holds a finger up, like a one moment kinda gesture, then projectile vomits on his clothes whilst trying to maintain eye contact with me. Finishes, looks back at me, gives me the sup upwards nod, then strolls down the street stark naked. Watched a man dip his Rolex watch in a glass of grape juice. He then proceeded to suck the juice off the watch, piss in the cup, and relit the watch. He was humming the chorus of Staying Alive the entire time. Where in the flying duck did this happen? One day, I was heading back to my dorm after class and heard a noise up a tree. I looked up and saw this squirrel holding 3/4 of a very big hamburger. My college campus had its share of fat squirrels, appropriate because it was in Wisconsin, but I had never seen one with such a huge amount of food. I stopped in my tracks and just watched as this squirrel proceeded to scarf down the burger. A friend of mine that was leaving the dorm approached me and asked what was up. I just pointed up, and we both stood there watching this squirrel devour this burger. It wasn't a person, but it was still one of the strangest things I've seen happen in public. We saw a guy take a big McSteamy right on the beach. Lifeguards were screaming at him, and the local police took him away. Levin sausage McBiscuits everywhere he went. I wrestled in high school, and was down about 20 pounds for a tournament. We were walking back to the hotel after weigh-ins and my pants kept falling down, as I forgot a belt. One of my buddy's dads asked me if I needed a belt, and I said sure do, thinking it was a joke, or maybe he had an extra one in the hotel. He proceeds to take off his belt, give it to me, pulls a second belt out of his front pocket, and puts it on. No idea why he had two identical leather belts with him that day, but I appreciated it. Once went on a drunken walk alone. At one point, while walking through a part of my suburb, I heard a hello shouted from across the street. I look over and see what appears to be a man who is also walking around drunk. Well, he must have been even worse than me, because he proceeded to hug a nearby telephone pole and slowly slide down it until he was laying on the ground, still holding the pole. AWW, he found a friend. A woman lift her skirt, squat and pee on the sidewalk in front of a bus stop. Middle of the day, high-end shopping center, busy intersection. I'm surprised I had to scroll this far down before I saw a public pissing story. If you gotta go, you gotta go. A young couple trying to transport a couch on Vancouver SkyTrain late at night. Moving while broke is like that sometimes. Looks like they were considerate enough to move it at night. I saw a guy mowing the middle of a busy street, no grass, at noon. Gotta wonder what he saw there, what color the sky was, and whether it was a happy place. There was a man running down the sidewalk who stopped when he got close and yelled strange fruit. And then farted into traffic, somehow not getting hit. He ran off down the street yelling about strange fruit. How does one fart into traffic? I'm genuinely curious. Dart. My bad.